if there is one thing that I understand, it's the impact that stress and burnout can have on your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So here's the thing. I managed to burn out twice before I was 27. Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I'm going to lean into it was a good thing because I learned at a really young age the impact that stress can have on your physical and mental and emotional well-being. But it was definitely something that had such a profound impact on all areas of my life. It impacted like I said, my physical health. It impacted my relationships. It impacted my ability to go to work, how I perceived myself, everything that you can think of, it impacted. Now, the scary thing is the fact that I had to do it twice before I really understood the real effect. But I really didn't understand what was happening the first time going around. The first time I burnt out, I was around 25 at the time. I was working in recruitment. I was working in a really intense industry. If you have ever worked in recruitment or you understand recruitment, you'll absolutely understand what I mean. But here's the thing, I had such a different perception around stress during that time that I had no idea what was going on. I mean, this was before the World Health Organization came out and said it was a diagnosable syndrome. During the first time I burnt out, I was having severe physical health issues. I was struggling with anxiety. I was struggling to concentrate, all of these things, but they were so vague that it was really hard to put a finger on it. And unfortunately, I had to take myself out of recruitment for a few months and heal my physical well-being. And then I ended up going back into recruitment just to burn out again within 6 months. Now, the second time I burnt out was extreme. It was so impactful on my physical health that I really didn't know what was going on. During that stage, I spent around 30,000 Australian dollars just trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I was going to specialists, I was going to doctors, I was going to naturopaths, I was going to acupuncturists, I was going to so many different health and well-being experts, but no one could really tell me what was going on. But the minute I recognized, you know what, something's just not right, was the day that I woke up looking like this. As vain as it sounds, I genuinely remember waking up and, you know what, this is a cold sore. So just so you know, just to get that cleared up, this is a cold sore. It's nothing else. So many people are like, is it impetigo? Is it this? No, it was a cold sore. I actually had it tested. And I wasn't, it wasn't rare for me to get cold sores. I was getting cold sores every second week during this time, but this was the worst cold sore that I ever had. Now, this cold sore progressively got worse. This is just the first day. The only reason why this picture exists is because I had to send it to my manager. I said to her, I was like, hey, I've got a really bad cold sore. Her response was, it's not that bad. I'm sure you'll be fine. Just come into work. Sent her that picture. And lo and behold, I was told, hey, I'll see you in a week. But this was the moment I woke up. I knew I had a cold sore. I looked at myself in the mirror and it was absolutely startling. I remember in that moment thinking to myself, there's two thoughts in my head. First thought was, holy crap, I look like Shrin Baratheon. That was the first thought. Followed very, very closely by, I really, really have to figure out what the heck is going on with my body. Why does stress have such a profound impact on my body? And it was realistically, I knew it was stress. I just didn't understand how damaging it could be. Now, what you can't see in this picture is the fact that I was also suffering from other health issues. I was struggling really severely with my gut health. I was told that I wasn't digesting food. I was told I had an inflammatory bowel disease, but they didn't know which one. I was like, fair enough. I was also struggling with inflammation throughout my body. So I could have swelling in all my joints and not be able to move really effectively. And so at 27 years old, I felt like a little old lady. No shame to little old ladies. You're absolutely awesome. It was just my body felt that way. You also can't see the fact that I was having anxiety. So I was having near panic attacks every single day that I had to catch the train. I was also struggling to leave the house because of my anxiety. And what you also can't see here is the fact that I was really struggling just to make information into anything meaningful. So it was like, I could read an email, I could be in a conversation. It was like I could see the words, I could hear the words, I could see people's mouths moving when I was in a conversation with them. But I couldn't then turn that information into anything meaningful. And that was really, really scary. I was also extremely forgetful at this stage as well. So I knew that something had to change. I knew I couldn't live my life like that. And that was the moment, in that moment, looking like Sharon Baratheon, that I knew I had to get my shit together. I had to figure out what was going on. So I ended up breaking down my stress management into 3 different phases. And I actually follow this phase right now when I work with people individually. This is how I work with companies. But this is sincerely what I had to do. So the first thing that I had to do was I had to restore my physical health, because there was no way I was going to be able to move forward in managing my stress without physically feeling like I could. Like, without having the strength to do it, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. So I spent a few months really just restoring my physical well-being. I made sleep such a priority. It became my number 1 priority. And to this day, it's still my number 1 priority. I would sacrifice my sleep because I had work to do. I had to get up early, whatever it was. I would sacrifice my sleep just to get more shit done. And it had such a profound impact on my body that I made it a priority. So I made sure that I was getting good quality sleep. I made sure that when I exercised, I didn't push myself past my limits. And that was something that I really had to understand. I had no idea that my body was letting me know that I wasn't coping for years. Like, we're talking, this was, burning out twice doesn't just happen overnight. It takes years. And it took me a long time to recognize that my body, I'm not superhuman. As much as I think I am, and to this day, I still think I'm a little bit superhuman, but I'm not superhuman. My body will let me know when it's not coping. And there's a massive difference between physically being incapable of doing what you're doing and mentally feeling like you can't do something. And we'll touch on that as well. But I had to really meet my body where it was. I had to stop punishing my body through exercise. I had to make sure that I was eating enough food so I wasn't punishing my body. So I really had to restore my overall well-being. And they were some of the things that I had to put in place, right? So I really put all of that in place. I focused on that for a few months. I had to restore my energy, and that's where I started. Then the second phase was I had to change my mindset. So I had some of the worst beliefs around stress. I had some of the worst negative self-talk. I had some really strong beliefs and perceptions around stress that kind of kept me frozen in time. So some of the things that I would tell myself was that I thrive under stressful situations. I thrive under pressure. Now, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with thriving under pressure. And to this day, I still thrive under pressure. But what happened was I found that really addictive. So I constantly would create scenarios and create situations where I put more pressure on myself to perform. When it comes to pressure, you can only put yourself under a certain amount of pressure for a short period of time. It's not a long-term thing that you can do. So I was constantly putting myself under pressure and I was wearing my body out. So I had to sort of change that perception. I had to understand that yes, pressure can be good, but it's not 100% setting that you can be in. So I had to undo that. I would also have told you during that time when I was, going through burnout or even pre-burnout, I would have told you that I'm just a really highly strung individual. I would normalize my anxiety. I would just say, this is just a part of who I am. It is what it is. And what I did was I prevented myself from seeing a world where I didn't have to be anxious. I just thought that was normal for me. And I lived in that. I had to break down that belief. I had to really understand that I can live a life away from anxiety, and anxiety was something that held me back and wasn't something that was driving me forward. And that just took time. And the final thing I really had to do when it came to my mindset was I really had to find better coping mechanisms. So my coping mechanisms during this time was to ignore, avoid, distract, or to what I affectionately call polish a turd. So I would engage in toxic positivity like nobody else could. So if 95% of my world could be on fire, and I would focus on the 5%. So if someone was being really rude to me, bullying me, or whatever it was, this is just an example, I would actually take out one nice thing that they might have done and completely disregard the 1,000 things that they've done horrible to me. And so I really had to focus on making sure that I wasn't avoiding stress. I wasn't ignoring it. I wasn't distracting myself from it. Don't get me wrong, some of those things can be good, but when they're your only coping mechanisms, it wasn't healthy for me. I wouldn't find active solutions. I wouldn't get myself out of situations that I could have gotten myself out of that were extremely stressful. I had to develop new coping mechanisms, change my beliefs, change my self-talk, change everything the way that I tackled stress just so I didn't burn out again. And the final thing that I had to do is I had to change the way that I worked, and I had to change the way that I saw work. Leading up to my burnout, it wasn't uncommon for me to work 12, 14, 16, 18-hour days. I would just do it without batting an eyelid. I mean, it comes down to how I perceived success and how I perceived myself. But I had to change that. I really subscribed to the whole like hustle culture. I really subscribed to having to outwork everybody. But I also just really did love work, but I didn't have any boundaries around it. And when you have no boundaries around the way that you work, you don't do any self-care. You don't take care of yourself. You don't even create space where you can manage your stress effectively because you're constantly doing. I had to learn to sort of take a step back and really understand effective processes at work that was going to lead me to success, but without leading me down to burnout. Because something that I really, really learned is that you do not have to work 18 hours a day to get shit done. You can actually effectively work in 8 hours, be super productive, and actually be more productive. So that was definitely something that I had to really undo and restructure. So I had to create boundaries around the way that I work to make sure that I could show up every single day as the authentic self that I was. And that just took time. Now, I'm not saying that this happened overnight. This was a really long process. I had to undo everything that I learned and relearn everything. And do not get me wrong, I'm still learning right now. And I think that's something that's so important to sort of get across to people, is that although I haven't burnt out in years, it's definitely something that I have to actively work at. I have to be disciplined. I have to have the willpower to sometimes put down my work and make sure that I'm taking care of myself. Now, I'm just sharing my story so you can sort of understand how I sort of perceive stress. Now, prior to all of me burning out, I can go back to even when I was in my early 20s, even into my late teens, and I can see how the habit started creating then and how I perceived stress back then. So I had to undo a lot of work. Now, I'm so happy today that I actually do have that balance and do have those boundaries in place to make sure that I can work effectively and I can help more people. And so that's the biggest reason why I tell people my story. Now, if you have any questions, if you could relate to my story, please let me know. I always love to hear other people's stories as well. So please feel free to share that with me. You can comment below or you can email me, whatever you need to. Now, if you haven't already, make sure that you do subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure that you also take the burnout score if you're not sure, if you're burnt out at all, if you haven't taken it already. Follow us on other socials because we do spread information around how to do proper stress management, whether it's for individuals or companies or whatever it is. So make sure you do that as well. And if you have any questions, please let me know.